So, hello everyone. Thanks again for taking the time. Delighted to have you guys for our probably fifth or sixth webinar of the year from Store Here. I'm delighted to be joined by Lifelike Media and Paul Kennedy. I'm going to introduce Paul now in a second, just as by way of a quick introduction. Delighted to be joined by Paul today. Ultimately, as always, we're really trying to help e-commerce brands put themselves in a better position to succeed, not only through the lens of revenue, but through profit as well, and do so profitably. It's an essential component of anyone's business today. So whether you're a brand or an agency, ultimately on the webinar or watching our playback, it's going to be an important consideration. And one of the bigger variables as part of that kind of ability to acquire customers profitably is going to be creatives. Delighted to be, as I mentioned, joined by Paul today to help kind of speak to that a lot more directly. So Paul, maybe I'll hand it over to you for a quick introduction.
Yes, Carl, thanks very much. I'm Paul, director and co-founder of Lifelike Media. We're a creative agency. We're based in Belfast, but we operate globally. I think about 35% of our clients are US based, a bunch of UK, Europe as well. And founded the company with my brother. I was the creative one and he was the operator. So I would shoot a lot of ads back in the day with my cameras and he would run them on Meta and TikTok and things like that. So a really good force came together to do that. And just over the years, we've scaled it up pretty well. Got about 25 team members, both mostly in Belfast, but remote as well. And yeah, we're putting out about 2,000 ads a month. And I'm not sure exactly the updated spends, but we're well into the tens of millions of spends against our creatives. So really love this topic, love creative, love that it's trending again, which is great because like when was it not creative, in my opinion? But yeah, we'll get into it a little bit more. I'm excited. Thanks for having me.
Likewise, 100%. Yeah, it's very much front and center. And if anyone's been keeping on tabs of any channel, social channel, or any news over the last couple of weeks, it's only evolving. And ultimately, again, creative is such an important lever today. And again, not only are we going to be preaching the advantage of creatives, the advantage of video, all that standard stuff that people already know, but what are the tactical, tips and strategies to actually create the right kind of creative content, but also do so at the right cadence in order to deliver continued and consistent results for your brand or for your clients. So just as by way of a quick introduction from my side before I hand it over to Paul for to look at the creative side and ultimately in more depth, want to give a little bit of an introduction to kind of set the scene as to where we kind of find ourselves in kind of e-commerce today. And I can, in doing so, give a little bit of the initial intro from my side as well for anyone who is unaware of Store Hero and what we do as well. So this is my most uplifting slide, I think, as part of my slide deck. Great way to get everyone motivated, but it's an important slide nonetheless. You know, it's never been easier to start an e-commerce business, but potentially never been more difficult to grow that business profitably. You know, as everyone would have seen, years of cheap customer acquisition costs over COVID, the ups and downs of e-commerce in that time meant that in years gone by, businesses didn't need to be as dialed in on their unit economics, on the stretching as much as they can from their creative spend and their spend in general, the performance spend. But that's no longer the case. Revenue isn't telling us the full picture, and we need to look deeper. Ultimately, not only has that, again, the cost to acquire customers has ultimately put people in that position. I'm sure everyone on the call has felt that over time, that if left unattended, that customer acquisition cost is continuing to increase. And one of the variables as to why maybe that revenue metric isn't necessarily telling us the full picture is some of their costs. At the end of the day, if you're making daily decisions with that revenue number and maybe being in a position there whereby you're talking to your accountant at the end of the month, these are all the variables that sit in the middle that might make that an awkward conversation if you're making decisions with one set of data and being held to account on another set of data. So having clear visibility on this stuff has never been more important. Just to put this into perspective, I think you might look at a typical order here. Let's say you have $100 AOV. Maybe you might have operated with unit economics in something looking like this over the last couple of years, obviously industry dependent. you have your product costs are taken into account there. You'll want to account for your VAT. You want to account for your packing, shipping, transaction fees, all those various variable costs. And then ultimately we have that marketing spend, and all going well, we have a profit left over in order to actually, after that marketing spend is taken into account on each individual order. Now, ultimately, what's happened over the last couple of years is there's been some pressure, upward pressure, I suppose, on that marketing spend. And if we're seeing incremental increases in our cost to acquire a new customer, let's say that goes from $25 to $35 in this case, what that's doing is it's compressing the profit we're making on every order. So there's a real tangible downside and outcome that's happening from those incrementally increasing costs, and it's putting more and more pressure on that profit number, that profit slice of the pie. So in this example, just by way of an example, but ultimately I'm sure everyone feels this to a certain extent, a simple change like this can now mean I'm driving 1/3 of the profit that I did on a first-time customer order than I might have done in years gone by. And to actually generate the same level of profit in my business, I now need to drive 3 times the amount of orders to stay sane, to stay level, which isn't a good place to be. So ultimately, we need to understand what levers are at our disposal, and creatives is definitely one of the most important ones up there. At the end of the day, Shopify screenshots don't tell you that full picture. So it's easy to kind of benchmark yourself or to be benchmarking yourself against those other, screenshots you'll see on Twitter, whatever the case may be. But it takes a deeper look, and equally with creatives as well. What's actually performing and what's going to serve you as a business based on your unit economics. And the kind of old adage is ultimately back in fashion. Revenue is vanity and profit is sanity. And today, if we do our job right, whether it's on this webinar or through either Lifelike or Store Hero, we want to bring a bit of sanity back to the conversation. And having had a sneak peek of some of Paul's slides, I know there's a lot of tactical advice that definitely speaks to that as well. Just by way of a quick introduction from my side, so my background, I started in e-commerce from the digital marketing agency side as well. Ran a digital agency based in Dublin and saw how data tracking and privacy changes over the last number of years have made it difficult for e-commerce brands to stay sane, to keep focus on growth, let alone profitable growth. And my co-founder Thomas saw this as well in his time at Shopify, working with some of the larger businesses across Europe, and between each kind of end of the spectrum there, seeing how each business, whatever your size, are ultimately dealing with some of these same challenges, albeit maybe with a couple of extra zeros on the end. Thomas also found this in his family business, Wherewee.ie, one of Ireland's oldest e-commerce stores. So between us, we've really seen a number of kind of angles to this problem, and ultimately we're in a good position to ultimately serve brands with Store Hero. So with Store Hero, we serve hundreds of brands in about 15 countries now, all looking to get that clearer view of profitability and actually make decisions with more clarity and confidence. Just by way of a quick introduction as to what we do. So ultimately, while a lot of tools will integrate your sales and marketing data, Store Hero, unlike other tools, will also allow you to sync your costs. So all those variable costs that are maybe adding the fog in the kind of decisions on a day-to-day basis, by inputting them into Store Hero, you have a clear view of how profitable you are at a store, product, or even down to an order level. With that, you can review your data, see how you're tracking and pacing throughout the month across sales, marketing, and profitability. You can input your sales and profit priorities. So to get a sense of what your overarching goals are, input them into Store Hero, and Store Hero will actually break that down into month-on-month targets across each metric and each important metric within your store. So you have a traffic light system then to track that, how you're performing against those metrics on a day-by-day basis. Not only are you on track again with that top line North Star revenue number, whatever the case may be, but as new customers on track or repeat customers on track, is my CPA on track, whatever the individual elements are that kind of make up the individual decisions from there. Yeah, so from there, I suppose ultimately that gives a quick overview and plenty more to go through. But again, I know we've tons of value we're going to squash into this hour to make it as tactical and beneficial for as many people as possible. So ultimately, again, this is all really with the intention of kind of laying some of the foundations here. looking at, okay, as you're approaching any decision within your e-commerce business, look at that not only by way of revenue, but understand the true profit implication. And one resource that I can draw people's attention towards as well is our order profit calculator. So if you're not very clear on exactly what profit you're generating on a per customer basis or a per order basis, we have a free resource allow you to calculate that number. And that's going to be a really important and valuable tool, especially as you kind of move into the the creative stage in order to actually build a plan for success by way of your creative. So I'll drop that in the chat. And again, something to keep in mind. So yeah, from there, Paul, hand it over to yourself.
Thanks so much. I'll definitely be calling up my slides, but some of the things you're saying there is it's so timely. And what I just had a conversation with one of my clients, and they had said, because all of those things that you're bringing up, there's so many different individual costs there, and you might be able to like type them in the first time, but are you realistically going to consistently type them into a spreadsheet every week? Probably not. But on another level, inside of marketing, like there's so much micro costs in there and they change every single time. So it's not just your marketing spend, like my ad spend, it's how much did it cost to make the ad that I then put on Facebook, which obviously we're going to talk about a lot more, but people don't think about that. But as an agency, you know, brands can sometimes just put agency fee in there and then not worry about UGC creator cost, editor cost, iteration costs. It's just one simple cost. So really timely, because I had that conversation literally just the other day. But I'll get my slides up. Here we go. I'm just going to jump onto this page. Can I see chat box at this at all, or is chat box on your side? Is there chat active?
Yeah,
if not, don't worry.
Yeah, so I have it there. I'll keep an eye and I'll be able to kind of push up questions. So just as a general note for anyone, whether you're watching on LinkedIn, on YouTube, directly through StreamYard, feel free to drop any questions in the chat as we go. I can raise them up and again, make you aware of them as we go, Paul.
Yeah, cheers. So I'll do a quick sort of agenda. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. I know the Masters is on and we want to go and watch Rory tee off. So in terms of the call agenda, I wanted to cover a few really important things. First of all, I want to meet you where you are, which basically means I had a look at the list of who was going to potentially join the call. And loads of guys I know, loads of brands I know, some I don't, but I also know there's some agency owners that are there. They might be looking for, you know, like that 1% real deep tactical thing that they can implement on their level. But then on the complete other side of the coin, you might have a new business, a startup, someone who's not really dabbled in this before and they're really just getting started. So with this presentation, I'd love to maybe lay down those fundamentals. As you can see there, like what even is it? What are we doing with creative? How does it work? What types of creative exist? And then slowly we'll get a little bit deeper. But reference the chat box, because if there is something that comes up and you think maybe I've just skimmed over that, but it sounded like it would be important, feel free to throw it into the chat box, and Carl, maybe at the end we can go through some things. So yeah, that's my agenda, some creative testing, how to go through angles and ads, what to measure when you find good ads, and how to scale them up, and then how to do it all really efficiently so you're not just pumping a whole load of money into this and throwing good money after bad. So really quickly, this is us. We've been in the game for about 5 years now, 5.5 years, well over 10 million in profitable ad spend, 23-person in-house team, far more than 20,000 ads built at this stage, with over 200 brands that we've been very, very lucky enough to work with. Some really fun ones in there, from sports to tech to product and booze and everything. And yeah, very lucky to actually work with some really big names. Top left is Phil Foden, round to Tommy Fury, Tyson Fury, Floyd Mayweather, Eddie Hall, and Harry Kane. As you can see, I'm actually primarily, I am what I would call like the creative strategist, creative director in a lot of these shoots, but starting to step away now to grow the agency inside the office rather than on the field. But it's been fun. I'll send you these slides after as well, so you can check out all that stuff. But what I thought I'd start with is the process. So if I go through this process off the top, then as we go deeper into each of these areas, you'll start to understand kind of what needs to be done for yourself at what level you're at. So with us as an agency, it all starts with research and ideation, which basically means understanding who the customer is and why the heck they'd even buy your product in the first place. because without that knowledge and without that direction, we can't then go forth and make up angles and run tests and do all of our ad creative. So everything starts with this research and ideation, and it's extremely important. It's probably the most important thing. Inside of ideation, we call it ideation, but really what we're doing is we're laying out angles. Like, what angle do we want to approach in this campaign? Like, for an example, do we want to talk about I think about a cleaning product I'm working with at the minute, or it's a home improvement product, but do we want to talk about the cleaning angle and the antibacterial USP and all of these things, or do we want to talk about the smell and how it smells like designer fragrances, right? There's two different angles there, and knowing who our customer is and knowing what they're into. Maybe they don't care about antibacterial this or that, but they just want to smell like Chanel. Okay, we know who that is. We know what angle we're going for. So all that happens in the first instance. Then we go forth and script everything. Scripting, it's not like it's not a movie script. We're trying to keep this really authentic from the UGC side. Maybe we're creating scripting prompts and things like that. Again, there's a whole lot I can go into. I actually think at the end of this call, I will give away our scripting template, because I could do a full presentation on that alone. But I said to the Store Hero guys and Carl, I was like, I'll give you some of those resources at the end. Then we go into production, which is the creation of the asset. How do we physically make the videos, the statics, the UGC or the pro videos? And then we give it to clients. Clients have a look. They go, oh, we probably wouldn't say that, or this might not be accurate, but I love this. And we do a bit of a revision round before we finally go live, which is the most important part. It's getting those ads in the ad account, whether it be Meta, TikTok, and start testing. Once ads have got some spend, the next big swing is your iterations. So in this presentation, I'm going to show you what do we look for whenever we're in the ad account to determine what is a winner that would then be getting those iterations, variations, and essentially repeat the whole process over and over again. So our fundamental goal as an agency at Lifelike Media is to reduce the CPA. Most people come to us in this CPA being cost per acquisition or new customer cost per acquisition. Most people, when they onboard with us, it's too high, and that's why they're coming. The pain point is like, I can't get my CPA down. I can't get it profitable. And they're usually in a position where they might run out of budget that they've allocated, or they'll get into some cash flow and operation issues. A lot of the times, they're not 100% sure of their LTV, which is the lifetime value. And the reason that could be a problem is because they don't fully understand what their sales cycle might be. As an example, which we're going to get into deeper, they might not need to be profitable on the very first order. It can be a case where they can buy a customer off, because at the end of the day, you're buying a customer off of these platforms. Buy one, but it's maybe not profitable, but it might be profitable in the second order or the third order. But because these guys aren't too sure of their LTV, it's kind of hard to figure out what that number looks like, which is why, again, Store Hero is such a great tool, because you can call this figure up. Other things here is their ad spend gets spent and then you get the return later. So a lot of people, especially early on, they fear that they put the ad spend there into the platform, but it doesn't just come back. You have to pay to play. So you pay first, and your ad gets seen, and then they go through that cycle, and then eventually your money comes back. So it's getting people that are early in that process to understand the whole mechanism. And then, of course, our goal is to get you to the profitable acquisition. So like I said, is it your first order? You have to be profitable in your first order, because there is no repeat purchase inside of your industry. Or can we afford to get you profitable in the third order, for example, and you know exactly how long that takes. We also consider the asset costs. So where you may just be thinking about ad spend as your marketing cost, we also think about the asset costs. Some people put it in operation as well, but it depends. So we're going to say, for example, CPA on the platform was 10 quid this month. That means after spending £1,000, they got 100 sales. But we also spent £500 in creators. So their CPA with the assets is actually £1,000 plus the 500 divided by the 100 sales, which makes it 15. So it's a completely different figure. It's 50% more. And again, there's just brands that don't have that visibility, and they aren't realizing that, and they're not clocking up how many creators they bought that month or how many edits they got from, that guy in the Philippines or whatever it might be. So this is where we come in, and we're trying to help you figure out those numbers so that we can build a strategy that's going to get you profitable. And again, tools like Store Hero is making that so much easier.
Just to jump in on that as well, Paul, there's a question there for you. So Craig has asked, I'll just throw it up on the screen. You mentioned the scripting templates you ultimately designed and built maybe for ads. Can that also be used for stories and reels and maybe organic content?
Absolutely. And again, I'm going to get into this in a second about the omnipresence and the omni-channel strategy, which essentially is a great way of reducing our efficiency, or improving our efficiency, sorry. So if we're going to be spending money on ads, the question is, can it be used in stories and reels? Absolutely. And other places too, which you'll discover in a few more slides. So great question. Okay, getting into the meat then. So whenever we start a project, we have to understand why people buy. Now, this has actually come from a book called Cashvertising from Drew Eric Whitman. I actually recommend this book to a lot of people. I've bought it as a gift for a lot of people. There's also an online version, like Cashvertising Online. But this is called The Life Force 8, and it's the fundamental psychological reasons why humans buy, and you can't argue with it. It's 1,000 years of human brain development. You just got to play into it. So these are the reasons why people buy things. And if you can come up with angles, again, this word angles is going to recur. If you can come up with angles in your ad creatives that are going to be tapping on one of these reasons why people buy, it's going to make your life so much easier, because instead of dangling, basic USPs, we're actually tapping into their psyche. And these top three are like some of my most favorite. So keeping up with the Joneses is, mates at school have it, I want it. My neighbors have it, I need to get it. Guys in the office have it, I need to get it. Social approval kind of plays into that as well. And freedom from fear, pain, and danger is like one of the highest ones. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs as well. Like, these are the reasons why people are going to actually purchase your product. So can we build scripts and ideas and angles around of these? So I'll not go through every single one. Definitely screenshot that so you have a copy of it. But again, I'm going to give you these slides after. That then takes us to ad creative types. So I'll start here with high production. High production for us is like the pro brand style video content. The way we describe it is, let's say I'm talking to you in your brand. It's your voice, it's your vibe, it's who you are as a brand and what you stand for and what you feel like and sound like. That's your high production. Then if you flick it all the way over to the UGC, that's the complete other side of the coin. That's me. That's my thoughts, my opinion on your brand, what it did for me, my problems, and how you solved it as a brand. So it's the complete opposite. And usually high production is, the shot with the Sonys, I always say, like shot with the really high quality cameras, the lights, the models. It looks really slick. It evokes some kind of emotion. It makes you feel a certain kind of way. And maybe it's delivering solid USPs. Whereas the UGC, like you can see in this example right here, the guy shooting it in the car, he's just got out of the gym and he's talking about this meal replacement product and how it helps him. And it's his true story. And then in the middle there, we have statics, a huge part of all ad accounts. I'll not go too deep into like where they all sit in a funnel, but statics, they convert a lot of revenue. Again, it could be because they've seen some videos and then eventually you're hitting them with a static offer, something like that. But this example in this static is a testimonial where someone said, I was X, now I'm Y, thanks to this product. So setting up your ad account then, so you know what kind of content you want to make. You figured out why people are going to buy it, and you've decided on your UGC and Pro and everything like that. The way we do it, and this is just a couple of screenshots, is we like to read our ad account like a book. It's a narrative. So we start from the left and we basically make our whole way across to the right. I've only split this up and down kind of for visibility, and also I split it between soft and hard metrics, which I'll explain. So amount spent is your ad spend, how much has been spent. The CPM is your cost to play on the platform. So what's the cost per 1,000 impressions? How many impressions have I got? What's my hook rate? Hook rate is how many people have physically stopped scrolling and watched the first 3 seconds. Then hold rate. Hold rate is how many people have watched we have it set as 15 seconds, which is through plays. But again, depending how deep you go, you can go 25%, 75%, whatever, of holding, paying attention to the video, if it's a video. Click-through rate being how many people have then watched it and then clicked. You can also add in landing page views and all kinds of extra information there. But what's the percentage? And then the link clicks is the quantity. And the CPC, the cost per click, is how much does it cost to get those clicks. So those we call soft metrics, because those are creative metrics, and we can use creative to manipulate those. We can use better hooks. If our hook rate's low, we can use better hooks in the video to get different results in the soft metrics. The hard metrics, then we talk more about like money and like the kind of like the final result. So how many physical purchases did we get? What was the value of those? So it's going to be pounds or euros. The CPA, cost per acquisition, again, is a pound value. And then your ROAS, so you've seen it before, like 5x, 4x, 3x, whatever. And then your AOV, so your average order value from the ad or the ad set. Because again, not everybody's going to purchase a 50 euro product. It might be, one might be 80, one might be 40, one might be 100, but we want to know which ads are producing the highest AOV. So those are some pretty good ones. And again, one of the giveaways at the end of this is what I call iteration cheat sheet. So it's an exact sheet telling you what you need to be setting up in your ad account. And it'll also show you what's good versus bad. So if you see your hook rate and it's 15%, do you know if that's good or bad? Well, I can tell you that it's not that good. You want it to be around 20 to 25%. So I have that sheet for each of those metrics, which is just so simple for someone that's beginning. They can go, hook rate equals this. Oh, Paul says it's not that good. Better go make a better one. So I'll give you that as well. Now we're into testing angles. So with the angle testing, it's they're different, let's say media buyers or whatever have different ways of doing the ad accounts. Now, I'm not going to speak too much about media buying because it's not my personal expertise. But what we love to do is make sure that we're splitting our ad sets as angles because we target quite broad. We're not trying to go an interest stack. We're not trying to target like dog lovers versus like Love Island or whatever it is. We're actually trying to do the angle as the ad set. So we're trying to do the dupe fragrance is an angle. We're trying to do the environmentally friendly angle. We're trying to do, the founder-led angle. So each of those angles, you can see 1, 2, 3, will then have a whole bunch of ads inside of them. So they will have statics, they will have UGC, and they'll have pro, and they'll have variations of those as well. So not just one each. So our goal is to find the winning angle. Because if we can find the winning angle, then we know where to allocate our time and our resources. A lot of people have this question, and I saw it before the call, how much, like what's the volume? How much ad testing do I need to do? Well, in terms of the actual ad volume, that's secondary to discovering first what angle works for you, especially if you're only getting started. So again, a lot of our clients are coming and it's a little bit scattered. The first thing we do is figure out what sells your product to your audience. Go back to the Life Force 8. What is the reason that they buy? Once we figure that out, and because we do it in the ad sets, it's very, very clear to see. The client has like a light bulb go off. They go, flip me, that's excellent. I didn't even think that was why my product was selling. And then we can throw loads of iterations and loads of variations and loads of volume at that angle. So that's probably the most valuable thing I'll say on this call. So screenshot that. 3, 2, 1, next.
Just to jump in on a question as well in the chat there, Paul. So question here, what's the best way to test creative variables without resetting the learning phase on Meta? So I think this is probably very much driven by the volume. There's a ton of caveats in here based on kind of size of account, but is there any kind of additional guardrails you typically recommend to people?
Yeah, I don't know if I believe in the learning phase anyway, because it's a debate I've had actually recently as well. For us, and let's say most of our clients, we're setting our own rules and our own parameters. For example, if we're aggressive, we might say that an ad we can spend 3x AOV before we decide an ad is a loser, which is very aggressive because that could be quite a lot of money. Some people might say, oh, I can only do like 3x break even or 2x break even. I don't have that much per ad. and that's fine. So I think you've got to set your own rules based off of your own risk appetite and the size of your war chest. But the learning phase, I don't really have evidence to talk about it. Like, we don't look at it. We just put we get more creative in, and if it's spending money, that's the thing. Does Facebook spend against it? Then we're happy. If it's getting not that much spend, I will probably assume that it's not that good, because otherwise Facebook would have spent more against it, because Facebook is, the all-knowing, all-powerful. So I trust Facebook. I hope that helps. Next is just a couple of screenshots inside to show you what it really looks like. So on the left, you can see the ad sets. Okay, we have a self-care ad set, design and fragrance ad set, ethical and sustainable, environment, pets, founder. And then inside of each of those, we have different ads. Now you can see, so it says ad set 4, so it would have come from the home improvement. We can see that they were getting, I think they were getting around £20 CPA when we came in. We've been able to find, and they didn't have any ad set split at all. We've been able to find an angle with a static, believe it or not, that is getting them a £7 cost per acquisition with 23 purchases. But again, like 16 or 15 pound is good for them. That's fine. And then we have this like freak £7, which is going to make our averages really nice. But now we know that ad set 4 is an angle that we should be spending more time on, and we should be exploring, maybe getting more creators or making more variations. So again, just an example to show what that looks like. Now that we want to measure results so that we can make further decisions. So basic key points here is a winning angle has ads inside target CPA or close to it. A little bit of nuance around it, but that's the obvious winner. The other point is, has it got spend? Because it might have target CPA, but it's only, and the target CPA might be like a tenner, but it's only spent a tenner. It's not enough to know. So that's one thing. We also like to read our account like a book, like I showed you before. That's how, when we measure results, we go through it from start to finish. And if we're getting ads that have extremely strong hook rates, like 30, 40, 50, even 60% hook rates, even if the CPA is not that good, or like the hard metrics aren't that good, we might take that hook right off of that video and we'll stick it on one that has potential. So we call that creative remixing, but it's signal-based. It's signal-based creative remixing. We've coined that term, and it's making all those chops and changes with content that already exists, which, because you don't have to hire a new creator or new editors, that's going to lower your asset cost, which I showed you at the very start, which is then going to make your creative more efficient. All right. So these are the tricks that we do for our clients that help them find results. But if you do it yourself, it's going to make it a little bit cheaper for you. And here's an example of what that could look like. So imagine this is your video timeline. I know, like, from speaking to a lot of brands, they always think that videos scroll up and down because they're so used to scrolling, but videos actually go left to right, like a narrative as well. So the first 3 seconds is what we would consider your hook. And like I said, if you had a really strong hook or a really bad hook, you might want to chop that off and replace it. And then you have the rest of the body. Let's say you're having a strong hook, strong hold, but the clicks are quite low. You might want to get rid of your call to action and replace it, because again, your objective is to win the click here. It could be that your offer wasn't strong enough. It might have just, the video might have just ended with no real offer, no real call to action. Or it could be that something in this middle part of the video didn't really sell to me. It didn't, push that problem onto me. It didn't convince me that I really needed to solve that thing or get that thing. So this is what it could look like if you're actively trying to cut and remix your ads inside like a timeline. As for static variations, again, it's super simple, because you could open up Canva and you could duplicate out the design you've come up with, and you could be testing headings. So these headlines are like, this is like testimonial based one, but there's loads of other variations of statics, like us versus them, USP callouts, Google search style, the iPhone messaging one. There's so many different statics that you can do. And the simple variation is to switch out the headlines or to switch out the testimonials each time. So that's one that anybody can do. You don't need any skills to do static, because you can do it on the likes of Canva. And then a quick framework. So kind of recapping here, but angles, like we're doing monthly ideas to produce new angles. So every month we're trying to come up with an angle based on what we're learning about our avatar. We're trying to identify which one performs best. Then we're trying to balance the volume with the testing. So when we're looking at spend, you obviously need to have some spend set aside that will fail. You're not going to get 100% hit rate. So let's have some budget ready to test new ideas and be okay with it failing. So you, again, for you, you need to figure out what that looks like. And then we want to spend on individual risk tolerance and margins. So it's not like you might be like, hell yeah, let's throw everything at it. Like I'm ready to go, but your margins might not support that. We need to be a little bit more tactical. And then we only turn up the volume once we figured out what the angles are, right? So create new ads inside these angles, split budgets between testing and scaling winners, which is what I was just saying there. Again, there's no rules, but some people like to increase their budget every single day by 20% as long as they're inside. I have a brand myself with a partner. He doubled our budget in the last 2 days on winning ads, which is crazy, gnarly, but fair play to him. He knows what he's doing. So it's up to you. That's my point. Last wee bit on creative efficiency, like our objective is to get more creative output with less cost or time. So your cost per asset, I know I've covered it a couple of times, but is going to be anything that it costs to produce the ad. So it could be your model, it could be your creator, it could be usage rights, because remember some creators are going to be negotiating their usage fees. It could be editors, products, props, locations, all kinds of things go into that. And then how you actually individually list that, like is it operation cost, marketing, whatever, that's up to you. And then you have your cost per acquisition, which is the ad spend. That's what people will typically call cost per acquisition. But we're saying then that your ad efficiency is your conversion value divided by your cost per asset and your cost per acquisition. So I'm not going to do public math, but if you've got like 2,000 here and then like 1,000 here, then you're going to get a number which is like 2, isn't it? 2 divided by 1 is 2. Why am I doing public math? I just said I wasn't gonna. But anyway, your goal is to get a higher number. So you might get like 1.6, 2, 2.5, whatever. The higher you can go, the better. And this isn't a common, this isn't the common metric. People don't normally look at this. The guy from, where is he from? That app Cam, I don't know if you know it. I jumped on a call with him and he told me about this, and they were spending like millions and millions of dollars a month. So I thought, well, we'll bring that in because that's genius. But it's just a nice way to look down your thing and say, what's my most efficient ads here? The last point then is like the easiest way to get efficient would be to have all of your costs bundled into one, which is why, shameless plug, an agency is so good because we cover all those costs. Here's some tricks then. So tips for improving creative efficiency, which is going to be your goal as a brand owner who's building their own ads, is create a master brief. So one document to rule them all. Once you create this brief, this is the brief that's going to go to any creators that you hire or anyone that you're going to be using to help produce ads. And you can finesse this brief over time. So a lot of people will sit and spend hours. Remember, time is money also. They'll spend many hours trying to figure out what they want to do off every single new ad iteration or every single new interaction with the creator. That's just not efficient time. So have one master doc. We use Notion, so you can even drop down like different avatars, over 50s, students, like athletes. Each avatar will have its own section, but the start of that brief is going to be all about, this is what we stand for, this is what we do, this is how we help, everything like that. So if you're sending that to 20 creators, that's not 20 pieces of work that you have to do. And like I said, you can finesse it over time. So that's going to help you with time. This is some like real alpha game here. You want to buy the raws off creators, not the videos, because the raws is going to give you more iterations. So I have a group. Again, I'm not no meaning to shameless plug here, Carl, but I talk about this stuff a lot. Like some of the biggest questions is, how do I get creators? How much do I pay them? How do I negotiate contracts? I talk about all that with my team in the group, and we have systems for finding creators. We have contracts that I give you, you can just literally copy and paste our contract with creators, which allows you to use their content in perpetuity, so indefinitely. Teach you how to negotiate, what you should be paying, what's a rip-off, things like that. Because again, the goal is to get your cheapest possible.
Just to jump in on that as well, like no shameless plug, no caveat needed, I should say. We've actually a chunk of Store Hero users have gotten really great value out of the lifelike communities. So definitely something I recommend people look at. Again, if they have questions around this topic, just to double click on that specific point. So often are we seeing brands who don't fully take these decisions into account before they engage with a creator, and it's after the fact that if you're maybe starting, you're looking to engage someone in the context of maybe organic creative or maybe distribution, you're looking for them to create content to use their audience. You ultimately are generating some really strong ad creative off the back of that, but if it's not been negotiated in advance, you will get you'll get destroyed. Like, they'll really squeeze you. You'll need to take that into account first, as part of that initial negotiation, or beware. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, it's a good point, and I can speak a lot on it, but especially with the way the world's going, this is like digress, but with AI and what we can do right now is we can run an ad, and if it does really well, we want to change something, we can now actually take our creator's voice, put it into 11 Labs and create a full voice dialogue for them and use B-roll, but just have the creator continually speaking with whatever script we produce. So we can produce unlimited scripts essentially for $0 extra. It's Wild West. It's still early. No one really knows what the law is with the whole AI stuff. So I'm not telling you what to do. I'm just saying what can be done. And we actually have a contract. We got a contract drawn up for that to say, we actually can reproduce your voice when you do this. And some people say yes to it and some people don't. But at the end of the day, if you're giving a creator who's doing this as a side hustle a few extra £100 to be able to AI their voice, they don't mind. And, I don't know, not saying ethically if it's right or wrong, but I'm just saying it exists. This is the way the world is going. So yeah, negotiate all that stuff. Last is like remote editor. So you have all the raws. You want to be able to just edit efficiently, cheaply. Like the best editors I ever had were in Mexico, but we have a lot of we have editors all over the world, and also we have our editors right here at home, so we can literally in the office just be like, oh, here, quickly do that one thing, lean over the shoulder. We don't have to wait for days. Students is a really, really good one. I've seen a lot of success with people hiring students who want to be in the creative game. They know how to use these tools at the back of their hand, so they can cut up edits no problem they can do it really cheaply for you. Some even just do it for work experience. And then yourself, I put the toilet emoji here because, true story, best performing ad in my own brand's ad account, which is absolutely crushing it right now. I just made it on the toilet. I just made it really quickly. Creator already sent me a video. I had a better idea, made it really quick, and it crushes. So there you go. CapCut, free tool. You can just take some time, make some ads, crush your business. Note on the whole creative roles, like this is what we have. We normally put about 6 people on an account, and we have a network of over 200 creators that we can lean on. 10 plus years experience per pod. We're always upskilling, and we've trained copywriters, which is also key. I would always have you send the copy to the creators in most instances because they don't have that skill set, which is why I'm going to send you that copy doc because it's really, really valuable. And then this was Craig's question about content channels. So again, for efficiency purposes, you're going to be investing this amount of money. It might not be a lot of money, but how can we get it? How can we make it even better? Once we've, even if the ad fails, even if it didn't get loads of sales, it can still be a TikTok. It can still be an IG reel. Go in your Facebook feed, your stories. It can go in your website, and see all those graphics, those statics. That can become your email thread, especially like the USP callouts and things like that. So all part of the omnipresence strategy. I think at this point, this is pretty much the end of my slides. I do have like a closing slide, but I think before we do that, did you want to do, Carl, any of the questions, or did you want to look at some ads?
Yeah, definitely. So, we're delighted to get so many questions. I think most people gave some sort of indication on what they wanted to focus on, and we picked out some kind of common themes and have a ton of questions that we can actually throw in here. So, ultimately, I think as a general principle, I think that was great content. I'm sure people will be delighted to rewatch this and dig through this and pull a ton of value out of it. So there's got to be pieces, I know, as part of those initial questions that are going to be covered, but definitely a couple of things that we'll want to kind of double down on and kind of give an extra kind of initial nudge on. So one kind of an initial question here. So how do we ensure our creative strategy is actually driving profit, not just engagement or clicks? So I can maybe kind of give initial intro on this and maybe throw it over to yourself, Paul. I think it goes back to the initial point around, like Paul even talking a lot there about understanding what that target CPA is. That gives a really solid reference point as to, like, you're ultimately telling Meta exactly what a conversion and what a customer is worth to you. It takes an actual understanding of your unit economics. So again, the way we talk about this, very in line with how you have it there, Paul, is around what's your path to profitability. Typically you're in three categories. You either need to be first order profitable because you don't know when you're going to see that person again. Maybe you're a furniture brand, for example. Unless you're a very good salesperson, you're not going to sell them another sofa next month. So that needs to account for itself today. Second, you might be in a position where you don't necessarily need to be wildly profitable on first order, but you just need to be break even. So again, you might consider kind of high margin businesses like health, supplements, beauty, skincare. A ton of businesses end up in the middle here where they can expect some repeat purchase potential, but they don't know exactly when it's going to happen. So better to make sure you're covering most of those costs today. And then thirdly, you're going to have a situation where you might be okay to be unprofitable on that first order. The way we try to look at that with Store Hero is you can actually see your profit LTV, or ultimately what that customer is worth to you through the lens of profit over time. So I think the reality is it's going to be different for everyone. By knowing exactly what profit you're generating, not only on the first order, but maybe within the first 3, 6, 9 months, you have a clear view as to what something is worth to you, the value of that customer to you. And therefore, like anything, if you understand what the value is, you know how much you're willing to pay for it. If you start there, again, look at having a clear understanding of those unit economics are so important. Maybe Paul, do you have anything to add on that as well?
I think you absolutely nailed it. Like, the only thing I would add is making it as easy as possible to know what those numbers are. Like, don't let the numbers get away from you. For example, if you're not too happy with the first round of assets, going back to the editor, like, are those editing hours adding up? Are you accounting for them? If you're doing little bits here, little bits there, you throw your product over to 5 creators. How much product cost is that? Whenever the creators are billing you, 300 quid here and 300 quid there, how much is that? So just having a really clear way of documenting that, and then like a line item. Again, as an agency, the brands love working with agencies for that exact reason, because it's one cost. It's just one line item, agency fees, and everything inside of that is covered by us, creators, usage rights, editing, scripting. So yeah, depending on where you're at, that might be the better option. I love plugging
Definitely. And I think sometimes that what otherwise might seem like a crude calculation, looking at the actual cost divided by the actual number of purchases, or if you're a new customer focused, the number of new customer purchases could be so powerful, because I think people can often go down a garden path here with attribution and multiple platforms taking credit for sales, and you just can kind of tie yourself in knots debating 5 different attribution windows on what ad and what channel deserves credit for what sale. So ultimately, if you have a clear overarching view, just it's a simple calculation, but it's so important as well.
Yeah, and just keep an eye on the metrics. So I think the question was about, like, clicks and stuff and views, but then don't forget your hard metrics inside the platform or inside Store Hero.
Definitely. If it's ultimately, if you set up your ad account with optimized for purchases, that you're not only putting Meta in the driver's seat, but you're ultimately telling Meta what you care about, and it's optimizing towards those decisions. I think in years gone by, we had to be, as media buyers, as kind of brands, or whatever kind of vantage point you're looking at, you had to be a lot more kind of iterative in terms in things like targeting, interest-based targeting, interest stacking, as Paul said. Whereas the bigger lever these days is that creative. It's the piece that you can use to kind of put your foot on the pedal and let Meta handle a lot of those other components. This is where you ultimately should be spending time. Just to kind of throw to another question, I'll throw it in the chat there just so I can put it up on screen. And where should we look, or where should a brand look for creative inspiration when our usual concepts stop working? Are there particular go-to resources you like to use, Paul?
Yeah, we love Foreplay. I was going to say Fireplay there. Foreplay is a tool which allows you to basically spy on your competitors' ads, but it's pretty good. And again, still like an artist here, you don't want to be copying like for like. You want to gain some inspiration. If the question is about inspiration, you can go find out what your competitors are doing there. So it's called foreplay.co, I believe. And it's really, really good for filtering by static, filtering by UGC, filtering by industry. And then we also look across other industries. So you might be, a health and wellness brand, and you might be selling supplements, but we also might look at, a sports tech brand who has a similar audience, whose goal is to get an athlete those 1% marginal gains. We might have the same goal for the same kind of guy, but coming at it from a different approach. We'll take our inspiration from another industry. And then, of course, the basics is going to be the ads library, the TikTok Creative Center, and just scrolling your reels for inspo.
Definitely, I agree on all that. Another question here: as a newly launched brand, what should we focus on to get some early wins with ad creatives? So again, this great question was sent on in advance, but I do think a lot of that initial content Paul mentioned there around understanding what are those key angles, what are those key kind of drivers of a decision and a purchase. I think too often we see a situation where maybe people just, it's very easy to, actually, there was a really good quote. Actually at an event I was at on Tuesday, and AI makes it very easy to be mediocre. And there's something to be said about that, whereby ultimately if you're optimizing towards the mean, the kind of, oftentimes too generalized content, and not actually have something that hooks a customer. It's all the kind of consistent principle. You need to justify where somebody would stop in a feed amongst hundreds or thousands of other assets and creatives. I think one thing that we like to recommend is think about the content they consume themselves, even organically. When you get stuck scrolling Instagram Reels or whatever the case may be, what is the format of the content, and how can you maybe create ads that don't feel like an ad in that typical structure? If you're not seeing the responses, does it look like you've plastered a kind of newspaper ad into an Instagram ad? Are there common pitfalls there? And the other thing I'll maybe say from my side before handing it over is, in terms of those angles, looking at your reviews is often a nice way to kind of understand what those hooks should be. I'd often turn the question on a brand sometimes whereby their ads might be very generic, but if we have an organic conversation, I'll often say to them, when you have an emphatic, diehard customer, what are the things that they say to you? And it's just reframing it in your mind. That's ultimately what you want to try to emulate and recreate by way of your ads. So try to challenge yourself maybe to ask a different type of question in order to get a different answer. Maybe Paul, you can add to that.
Yeah, awesome. I'll go a different direction then for tactics. If you're saying you're a newly launched brand, I'll just assume it's like lower budget. And what is a good thing to do would be go on to Canva to create your statics first. Statics is going to typically be easier and cheaper to create, and statics are really powerful. So I'd maybe create a whole bunch of testimonial focused ads. Sorry, maybe not actually. If your brand's new, you might not have too many testimonials, but maybe you have a couple. But I like the us versus them. This is what we are. We can outline some USPs versus our competitor, and maybe some of the things that they don't have that you have. That's a really easy ad that can be made in 15, 20 minutes. And you can just duplicate that out inside Canva, change a bunch of headlines. That's low cost. And you can then get those live. Just as I was saying, with the same structure inside your ad account, we want to target different angles. So different reasons people are going to buy, but we do it with statics. Then once we realize, this is the angle that's performing and it's cost me $0 to get this made, then I'll go put my resources into getting the UGC, and then I'll create my scripts around the angles that have proven themselves, again, with no money down other than ad spend and a bit of time.
Great advice. One or maybe two more questions before we hit the hour we can squeeze in. So Leighton, that's a great one. How do you see maybe a variety and different approaches to this process, overall process of creative scaling with US versus European brands?
Yeah, so two things come immediately to mind. Like, most of our US brands are very aggressive, and we talked about the profit. They don't, like, very few of them care about being profitable in the first order, especially the supplement brands and things like that. Like, they literally don't care, which is really interesting. Where I guess Irish brands especially are very particular over every dollar being, or every pound or euro being profitable. So it's kind of balancing the two approaches and maybe being careful with how we communicate that to people who are a little bit more careful with their spend, because that's totally fine if that's what you're at. The other thing with the European, and this is something that's happened quite a lot for us in the last quarter, is the different language barriers. So when you say European, I'm going to think of it in our context, where we have ads that are going into Germany, Netherlands, but as well as, Ireland. So we've created the approach where we can create in language one and then leverage AI to actually create the exact same ad, but in Dutch or in German. I can show you as an example if you're really interested, but it's fantastic. The tech that's actually out there at the minute. And again, going back to creative efficiency, I don't have to send the product to someone in Germany to say this sentence and to do this ad in German and then pay a translator to confirm that it's accurate. I can just have it done by AI. So that's a completely new approach. You ask about different approaches, like that's new for us. It's new for some of our brands. I hope that answers your question. That's just what came to mind whenever you asked it there.
No, that's a great one. And even just again to take another angle to kind of vary it up a little bit, I think one thing, definitely there's an appetite for kind of growth and priorities as well. There's a big, every industry will have kind of variables, I think, but especially kind of brands operating in the US, they're not restricted by like saturating their market as quickly as we are maybe in Ireland or the UK and Europe. Even though Europe as a whole is such a bigger market, I think we're kind of trained in kind of on a country by country basis to maybe not look past our own borders to a large extent a lot of the time. So ultimately, just by the default, we're default B, we're going to operate and we're going to raise our level of ambition, and that's certainly, I think, one thing that European brands should take into account, or try to kind of pick up a few cues from the Americans in that way. I suppose that's a great place to finish up. I know in terms of time, there's a ton more we wanted to get through, but obviously there's so much within this topic, way too much to kind of do within an hour. So I know this won't be the last time we touch this topic. So any kind of parting notes, Paul, from your perspective as to where people can contact you, kind of learn more, and kind of put this into action?
Yeah, I mean, I have the link to all the resources that I promised. Did you want me to give that to you and you could distribute it, or is there a better way for me to get that out to everyone?
Yeah, that's perfect. What we'll do is we'll show it. So everyone either on the webinar now or even watching this as a playback, you'll already have it, of course, and you'll get a playback of the video within the hour after this is finished. And then tomorrow morning, so Friday morning, on the Friday the 11th, we'll send on the extra resources between the order profit calculator to help you actually understand what's the true value of a customer and how much you should be willing to pay to acquire them. And then again, with that clear view of what they're worth to you, here's the creative process to put in place to scale and actually drive more results. So from there, I think that's a good place to finish up. Thanks again, Paul. Delighted to do this and get a ton of value in front of people. So, and thanks everyone for taking time out of their evening, morning, wherever you're joining us from. And we'll be in touch. Thanks a lot.
Cheers, Kyle. See you. Bye, guys.
See you then.